Siddhartha Gautama was born a prince. He was born in Lumbini, in the land of the Sakyas. His father ruled the kingdom of Kapilavastu. The year was 624 BCE. It was a time of peace and prosperity. Siddhartha's birth was a joyous occasion. His parents named him Siddhartha, which means he who achieves his aim. Astrologers predicted he would become either a great king or a great spiritual leader. His father, King Suddhodana, hoped Siddhartha would follow in his footsteps. The king wanted to shield his son from suffering. He built lavish palaces for Siddhartha. He surrounded him with every pleasure imaginable. Siddhartha grew up in a world of beauty and ease. He knew nothing of old age, sickness, or death. Siddhartha was a curious and intelligent child. He excelled in his studies and enjoyed athletic pursuits. He married Princess Yasodhara and they had a son, Rahula. Life seemed full of promise, yet a seed of discontent had already been sown within the young prince. He felt a deep yearning for something more. King Suddhodana spared no expense in ensuring Siddhartha's happiness. The palace grounds were transformed into a paradise. Beautiful gardens offered shade from the sun. Sparkling fountains played soothing melodies. Exquisite flowers perfumed the air. Musicians filled the palace with enchanting music. Dancers captivated Siddhartha with their graceful movements. He had access to the finest clothes, the most delicious food, and the most stimulating company. Every desire was fulfilled before it could even arise. The king believed that by protecting Siddhartha from hardship, he could steer him toward a life of power and influence. He hoped to prevent his son from ever questioning the nature of existence. He wanted Siddhartha to embrace a life of comfort and rule. However, the king's efforts to shield Siddhartha from the realities of life ultimately backfired. The prince's sheltered existence only served to intensify his innate spiritual curiosity. He began to sense that true happiness lay beyond the palace walls. A longing for something deeper began to stir within him. Despite his father's efforts, Siddhartha was destined to confront the realities of life. At the age of 29, he ventured outside the palace walls for the first time. On these chariot rides, he encountered what became known as the Four Sights. First, he saw an old man, his body bent and frail. This was Siddhartha's first encounter with aging. He was deeply troubled by the sight of human frailty. He realized that youth and beauty were impermanent. Next, he encountered a sick man, racked with pain and fever. This sight revealed the pervasiveness of suffering. Siddhartha was shaken by the realization that illness could strike anyone. He felt a surge of compassion for the man's agony. On his third journey, Siddhartha came across a funeral procession. He witnessed the lifeless body being carried to its final resting place. This stark encounter with death filled him with dread and confusion. He realized the inevitability of his own mortality. Finally, Siddhartha encountered a wandering ascetic, his face radiating peace and serenity. This encounter sparked a glimmer of hope within him. He saw in the ascetic a path to understanding the true nature of suffering. He realized that there were those who sought liberation from the cycle of pain. The Four Sights deeply disturbed Siddhartha. He was no longer content with his life of luxury. He realized that wealth and pleasure were fleeting. He was determined to find a way to end suffering. One night, Siddhartha resolved to leave the palace. He took one last look at his sleeping wife and newborn son. He knew he could not stay. His heart yearned for a deeper truth. Under the cover of darkness, Siddhartha slipped out of the palace. He exchanged his fine clothes for the simple robes of an ascetic. He shaved his head and beard, renouncing his former life. This act of renunciation became known as the Great Departure. Siddhartha's decision to leave behind his privileged life was not an act of rejection, it was an act of love. He knew that true happiness could not be found in material possessions or sensual pleasures. He was determined to find a way to alleviate the suffering of all beings. He set out on a solitary journey to seek enlightenment. Siddhartha wandered throughout the Ganges plain seeking wisdom from various teachers. He immersed himself in their teachings, studying meditation and philosophy. He practiced rigorous ascetic techniques, pushing his body to its limits. He believed that by denying his physical needs, he could transcend his earthly desires and attain enlightenment. He subjected himself to extreme fasting, often eating only a few grains of rice a day. He practiced breath control to the point of experiencing visions. Years passed in this manner, filled with intense discipline and self-denial. Siddhartha's reputation as a holy man grew. 5 other ascetics, impressed by his austerity, became his devoted disciples. Yet, despite his efforts, enlightenment remained elusive. One day, while bathing in a river, Siddhartha collapsed from weakness. He realized then that his extreme practices were not leading him to liberation. He remembered a childhood experience of deep, meditative absorption. He understood that true enlightenment lay not in self-mortification, but in cultivating a balanced and mindful approach. Siddhartha decided to change his approach. He accepted a bowl of rice pudding from a village girl, regaining his strength. He realized that true liberation lay in the middle path, a path of moderation between extremes. He sat down under a sacred fig tree, now known as the Bodhi tree, determined to meditate until he reached enlightenment. He vowed not to rise until he had found the truth. He faced Mara, the tempter, who assailed him with doubts and desires. Yet Siddhartha remained steadfast. After 49 days of intense meditation, Siddhartha attained enlightenment. He experienced a profound awakening to the true nature of reality. He understood the interconnectedness of all things. He realized the impermanence of all phenomena. He became the Buddha, the Awakened One. He saw the causes of suffering and the path to its cessation. He understood the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. He realized that true happiness lay in liberation from this cycle. He was filled with compassion and wisdom. The Buddha's enlightenment was not a personal achievement. It was a realization of universal truths that could liberate all beings from suffering. He dedicated the rest of his life to sharing these insights with the world. His core teachings are encapsulated in the 4 noble truths. The truth of suffering. Life inevitably involves suffering, from physical pain to emotional distress. The truth of the origin of suffering. Suffering arises from attachment, aversion, and ignorance. The truth of the cessation of suffering. Suffering can be overcome by eliminating its root causes. The truth of the path to the cessation of suffering. This path is the Eightfold Path, a practical guide to ethical conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom. The Eightfold Path consists of right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These teachings offer a practical roadmap to cultivate inner peace, compassion, and wisdom. They emphasize personal responsibility and the interconnectedness of all things. They provide a way to live with greater awareness, kindness, and clarity. After his enlightenment, Buddha traveled throughout India for 45 years. He shared his teachings with everyone, regardless of social status or background. He attracted followers from all walks of life: kings and paupers, merchants and farmers, monks and nuns. He established a monastic order, the Sangha, to preserve and spread his teachings. He ordained both men and women, recognizing their equal potential for enlightenment. He emphasized the importance of community and ethical conduct. Buddhism spread rapidly throughout India and beyond, carried by monks and merchants along trade routes. It reached Southeast Asia, China, Korea, Japan, and Tibet, evolving into diverse traditions while retaining its core principles. His teachings offered solace to those suffering from loss, illness, and fear. They provided a framework for ethical living and social harmony. They inspired countless individuals to embark on their own journeys of self-discovery and compassion. The story of the Buddha is a timeless journey of transformation. It reminds us that true happiness cannot be found in external circumstances. It lies in cultivating inner peace and wisdom. It is a journey that we can all undertake. We may not all be born princes, but we all experience the challenges of life. We encounter sickness, old age, and loss. We grapple with anxieties, desires, and disappointments. The Buddha's teachings offer practical guidance for navigating these difficulties. By practicing mindfulness, we can become more aware of our thoughts, feelings, and actions. By cultivating compassion, we can extend kindness and understanding to ourselves and others. By developing wisdom, we can gain deeper insights into the nature of reality. The Buddha's journey is an inspiration for us to live with greater awareness, purpose, and compassion. It encourages us to seek enlightenment not just for ourselves, but for the benefit of all beings. His message of peace, wisdom, and loving kindness continues to resonate across cultures and centuries, offering hope and guidance for a more awakened world.